I stared at Sam, my heart pounding in my chest. The flickering light from the TV cast a warm glow over his handsome features as he held out the small velvet box, his eyes shining with love and hope. "Mia, marry me," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of those 3 words. "We can make our own beautiful story." 1,000 emotions swirled within me, joy, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of rightness. This was the moment I had dreamed of, the culmination of our journey from colleagues to friends to lovers. With Sam by my side, anything seemed possible. "I thought you'd never ask," I whispered, tears of happiness welling in my eyes. "Yes, 1,000 times yes!" Sam's face broke into a brilliant smile, and he slipped the stunning diamond ring onto my trembling finger. Our lips met in a passionate kiss, sealing our commitment to one another. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the past, not the future, just the 2 of us and the love we shared. As we celebrated our engagement over glasses of champagne, my mind drifted to the journey that had brought us here. Sam had been my rock, my unwavering support, through the ups and downs of life. His calm presence and steadfast devotion had carried me through even the darkest of times. "We should visit my parents," I suggested, eager to share our joy with the people who had raised me with such love and guidance. Sam's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I can't wait for them to meet their future son-in-law." Little did we know, our path to happily ever after would be paved with unexpected challenges and heartache. But in that moment, basking in the warmth of our love and the promise of a future together, nothing could have prepared us for the storm that was brewing on the horizon. With our hands intertwined and our hearts full of joy, Sam and I made the short drive to my parents' house. As we pulled into the familiar driveway, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. This was the place where I had grown up, surrounded by unconditional love and support. The front door swung open before we could even ring the bell, and my mother, Ruth, rushed out to greet us, her face beaming with pride. "My baby girl is getting married," she exclaimed, enveloping me in a warm embrace. My father, David, followed closely behind, his eyes twinkling with happiness. "Welcome to the family, son," he said, clapping Sam on the back with a firm, fatherly grip. As we settled into the cozy living room, my parents showered us with questions about our plans for the future. Sam, ever the calm and composed one, fielded their inquiries with ease, his arm draped around my shoulders in a reassuring gesture. "We're so thrilled for you both," my mother gushed, her eyes darting between us. "Mia, you've found yourself a wonderful man." "Thank you, Mrs. Carlson," Sam replied, his voice rich with sincerity. "I promise to always cherish and support your daughter." My father nodded approvingly, his gaze settling on the sparkling diamond ring on my finger. "That's a beautiful ring, Sam. You've got excellent taste." As the evening wore on, the conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by laughter and reminiscing. My parents' warmth and acceptance enveloped us like a cozy blanket, and for a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to bask in the knowledge that my life was finally falling into place. Little did I know, our visit to Sam's family would shatter that illusion, exposing me to a darkness I had never imagined. But in those precious hours with my parents, none of that mattered. I was surrounded by love, and that was all that mattered. Buoyed by the warmth and acceptance of my parents, Sam and I set off to meet his family the following weekend. As we pulled up to the stately brick home, nestled in an affluent neighborhood, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of apprehension. Sam squeezed my hand, reassuringly. "Don't worry, babe. They're going to love you." I mustered a smile, determined to make a good impression on the people who would soon become my in-laws. The moment we stepped through the door, a flurry of greetings and introductions ensued. Sam's mother, Brenda, greeted us with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome, darling," she said, enveloping Sam in a perfunctory hug. Sam's father, Harold, offered a firm handshake, his gaze appraising me from head to toe. "Pleasure to meet you, Mia." Sam's sister, Jill, and her husband, Mark, rounded out the group, exchanging pleasantries with a cool detachment that set my nerves on edge. As we settled into the opulent living room, Brenda fixed her gaze on me. "So, Mia, what is it that you do for a living?" I took a deep breath, determined to make a good impression. "I'm a marketing coordinator at a small firm downtown." Brenda's perfectly arched eyebrow rose ever so slightly. "I see. And what about your educational background?" I have a bachelor's degree in communications from the local university, I replied, my confidence wavering under her scrutinizing stare. How? Quaint, Brenda murmured, her tone dripping with condescension. Jill chimed in, her voice laced with disdain. I can't imagine settling for such a simple job. Mark and I have much loftier ambitions. I felt Sam tense beside me, but he remained silent, his jaw clenched tightly. The conversation shifted to other topics, but the undercurrent of disdain lingered, like a dark cloud looming over our heads. Brenda and Jill's snide remarks and thinly veiled insults chipped away at my self-assurance, leaving me feeling small and insignificant. As the evening drew to a close, I found myself longing for the comfort and acceptance of my own family. The Brooks clan had made it abundantly clear that I didn't quite measure up to their standards, and the realization stung like a slap to the face. In the car ride home, Sam reached over and took my hand, his touch a silent apology for the behavior of his family. But the seeds of doubt had been planted, and I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this was only the beginning of a long, uphill battle. Despite the lingering sting of Sam's family's judgmental attitudes, I was determined to make the best of the situation. On our next visit, I decided to take the high road and compliment their beautiful home, hoping to find some common ground. "This is such a lovely house," I remarked, admiring the intricate woodwork and tasteful decor. "You have exquisite taste." Brenda fixed me with a cold stare that sent a shiver down my spine. "Yes, we can afford the finer things in life," she replied, her voice dripping with disdain. Jill chimed in, her gaze sweeping over me with undisguised contempt. "It must be quite a change from the humble dwellings you're accustomed to, Mia." I felt the blood drain from my face as the weight of her words sank in. Sam's jaw clenched, but he remained silent, his eyes pleading with me to ignore their barbs. Determined not to let them see how deeply their words had cut, I forced a smile. I may not have grown up with such extravagance, but I was raised with values far more precious: kindness, humility, and respect for others. Brenda let out a derisive snort. "How quaint! Tell me, Mia, what exactly are your intentions with my son? Surely you don't expect to maintain this charade forever." The venom in her words stung like a slap to the face. "I love your son more than anything in this world," I replied, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "And if you can't see that, then the problem lies with you, not me." Jill's cruel laughter echoed through the room. "Oh, how precious! The little charity case thinks she's worthy of our family." Harold and Mark remained silent, their indifference only serving to embolden Brenda and Jill's toxic behavior. Tears of humiliation burned in my eyes as I turned to Sam, silently pleading for him to intervene. But he simply stood there, his shoulders slumped in defeat, unable or unwilling to confront the vitriol spewing from his own flesh and blood. In that moment, I realized the depth of the chasm that separated us, a seemingly insurmountable divide of wealth, status, and entitlement. As I walked out of that house, my heart heavy with the weight of their cruelty, I couldn't help but wonder if our love was strong enough to withstand the onslaught of their disdain. The days leading up to our wedding were a whirlwind of excitement and anticipation. As I tried on my beautiful white gown, visions of our future together danced in my mind. A lifetime of love, laughter, and cherished memories with the man who had captured my heart. But just 24 hours before we were set to exchange our vows, a bombshell dropped that shattered our dreams into a million pieces. Sam's face was ashen as he relayed the news. "They're not coming," he said, his voice hollow and defeated. "My family just called to say they won't be attending the wedding." The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind from my lungs. After everything we had endured, after the cruel and degrading treatment they had subjected me to, I had hoped, foolishly it seemed, that they would at least show up for their own son's wedding day. Tears streamed down my cheeks as the reality of their callousness sank in. "How could they do this to us?" I sobbed, burying my face in Sam's chest as he held me tight. "I'm so sorry, babe," he murmured, his own voice thick with emotion. "I never imagined they would stoop so low." As the fateful day dawned, a palpable tension hung in the air. Our families and friends gathered, their faces etched with concern and confusion at the glaring absence of Sam's relatives. Whispers rippled through the crowd, questions left unasked but lingering nonetheless. I stood at the altar, my hands trembling as I clasped Sam's. In his eyes I saw a mixture of love and regret, a silent apology for the pain his family had inflicted upon us. "I love you," he mouthed, his gaze unwavering, "forever and always." And in that moment, as we exchanged our vows and sealed our union with a kiss, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. These people, who were supposed to be Sam's flesh and blood, had proven themselves unworthy of our love and loyalty. As we celebrated our nuptials with our loved ones, a newfound strength surged within me. I was no longer the timid, insecure girl who had cowered in the face of their cruelty. I was a wife, a partner, and a force to be reckoned with. Sam's family had made their choice, and in doing so they had forfeited their place in our lives. From that day forward, we would forge our own path, unburdened by their toxic influence, and free to create the beautiful story we had always dreamed of. The years following our wedding were a whirlwind of new beginnings and hard-earned triumphs. Sam poured his heart and soul into launching his own tech startup, working tirelessly to turn his dreams into reality. I stood by his side every step of the way, cheering him on and providing unwavering support. Despite the challenges and long hours, our bond only grew stronger. And when our beautiful daughter Lily arrived, our little family was complete. Holding her in my arms for the first time, I was overwhelmed by a fierce, protective love that knew no bounds. As Sam's business began to flourish, even in the face of a global pandemic, I couldn't help but swell with pride at his determination and resilience. He had overcome so much adversity, and yet he remained steadfast in his pursuit of success, not for wealth or status, but for the chance to provide a better life for our family. It was during those heady days of triumph that the first cracks began to appear. Strange messages and calls started trickling in from Sam's estranged family, begging for his attention and financial assistance. "They're in trouble, Mia," Sam confided one night as we cuddled on the couch, Lily sleeping peacefully in her nursery. "Dad's business is failing, and they're drowning in debt." I felt a familiar surge of anger rise within me, memories of their cruelty and rejection still fresh in my mind. "After everything they put us through, they have the audacity to come crawling back?" Sam's brow furrowed, his expression torn. "I know, believe me, I haven't forgotten, but they're still my family, as messed up as they are." I took a deep breath, tamping down the bitterness that threatened to consume me. "What do you want to do?" His gaze was resolute, but tinged with sadness. "I think we need to hear them out, at least. Maybe this is their chance to make amends." Little did I know that the storm we had weathered was merely a precursor to the tempest that was about to be unleashed. As we braced ourselves to confront the demons of our past, we had no idea just how far Sam's family was willing to go to regain their lost status and power. The path ahead was fraught with danger and heartache, but I knew one thing for certain. I would stand by my husband's side, come what may, and if his family dared to cross us again, they would face the full force of my wrath, a reckoning long overdue. The incessant ringing of the doorbell shattered the peaceful quiet of our Sunday afternoon. Lily, startled from her nap, began to wail, her cries piercing the tense silence that had descended upon our home. Sam shot me a quizzical look as he rose to answer the door, his brow furrowed with concern. I trailed behind him, my heart hammering in my chest, a sense of foreboding washing over me. The moment the door swung open, my worst fears were realized. Standing on our doorstep like a specter from the past was Sam's family. Brenda, Harold, Jill, and Mark, their expressions a twisted mix of desperation and entitlement. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. Brenda stepped forward, her perfectly coiffed facade cracking ever so slightly. "We need your help, Samuel. Your father's business is in ruins, and we're destitute." Sam's jaw clenched as he regarded them with a mixture of disbelief and resentment. "After the way you treated us, you have the audacity to come here begging for money?" Harold's face flushed an angry shade of crimson. "Watch your tone, boy," he snarled, his fists clenching at his sides. "We're your family, and you owe us." The air crackled with tension as I stepped forward, positioning myself between Sam and his volatile father. "You're not welcome here," I spat, my voice dripping with venom. "Not after the way you humiliated me, the way you abandoned your own son on his wedding day." Jill's cruel laughter cut through the charged atmosphere like a knife. "Oh, please, spare us the martyr act. We all know you're nothing but a gold-digging little tramp." That was the final straw. A red haze of fury descended upon me, and before I could stop myself, the words tumbled from my lips. At least I'm not a shallow, vapid bitch who has to rely on her husband's money to feel superior. The shocked silence that followed was deafening. Brenda's mask of composure shattered, revealing the true depths of her malice. "How dare you speak to us like that?" she hissed, her eyes blazing with hatred. Harold lunged forward, his massive frame towering over me. "You'll regret those words, you little—" But before he could finish his threat, Sam intervened, placing himself squarely between us. "Don't you dare lay a hand on my wife," he growled, his voice laced with a steely resolve I had never witnessed before. In a blur of motion, Harold's fist connected with Sam's jaw, sending him staggering backwards. I let out a scream of anguish as chaos erupted around us. Through the haze of violence, I caught sight of our neighbors rushing to our aid, their faces etched with horror. Without a second thought, I dialed 911, my hands shaking as I pleaded for help. The wail of sirens pierced the air, and within minutes the police had arrived, hauling a raging Harold away in handcuffs. Brenda, Jill, and Mark were taken into custody for questioning, their faces a twisted mask of disbelief and outrage. As the dust settled, Sam and I clung to each other, our bodies trembling with the aftershocks of the confrontation. Lily's cries echoed through the house, a poignant reminder of the innocents we were fighting to protect. In that moment, as I surveyed the wreckage of our once peaceful home, I knew that there was no turning back. Sam's family had crossed a line, and they would pay dearly for their transgressions. Revenge, once a fleeting thought, had now become an all-consuming obsession, a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of their privileged existence. The aftermath of that fateful confrontation was a blur of police statements, legal proceedings, and the overwhelming task of piecing our lives back together. Harold's violent outburst had sealed his fate. He was arrested and charged with assault, his once prestigious reputation in tatters. As for Brenda, Jill, and Mark, they were released after a night in custody, their haughty demeanors replaced by shock and disbelief at the consequences of their actions. It seemed they had finally realized that their wealth and privilege could no longer shield them from the consequences of their toxic behavior. In the days and weeks that followed, the full extent of their downfall began to unfold. Harold's business, once a thriving empire, crumbled under the weight of his legal troubles and mounting debts. Brenda, accustomed to a life of luxury, was forced to sell their lavish home and downsize to a modest apartment. Jill and Mark fared no better, their extravagant lifestyle funded by Harold's now dwindling fortune. They were reduced to living off their meager savings, a far cry from the opulence they had once flaunted in our faces. As for Sam and me, we made the difficult decision to sever all ties with his family, once and for all. The scars of their cruelty ran too deep, and the risk of further harm was too great, especially with our precious Lily to consider. In the months that followed, a strange sense of peace settled over our little family. The weight of their toxic influence had been lifted, and we were finally free to breathe, to heal, and to focus on the love and happiness that had sustained us through the darkest of times. It was during those quiet moments, as I watched Sam play with Lily in the park or snuggled close to him on the couch, that I realized the true depth of my gratitude. We had endured the unimaginable, the onslaught of hatred and jealousy from those who should have embraced us with open arms. Yet in the end, their downfall had been of their own making, a karmic reckoning for the pain they had inflicted upon us. And as I basked in the warmth of my little family, I couldn't help but feel a sense of sweet, well-deserved revenge. The road ahead was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. We had emerged from the storm stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. And as I looked into the adoring eyes of my husband and daughter, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. A united front against the cruelties of the world. For in that moment, surrounded by the love and laughter that filled our home, I had everything I could ever want or need. And the bitter taste of revenge had never tasted so sweet.